So in this video, I'm going to walk you through an entire corporate video production from the very first client conversation all the way through the final shooting days in Midtown Manhattan. We are talking about a real corporate image film project for a real client, and I'm going to break down every single step of how we made it happen. We will cover how we landed a client, how we structured the pitch, how we handled pre-production for a corporate filmmaking project of this scale, and then we actually went down on set. If you are a corporate videographer or a video production studio owner, this behind the scenes is for you. And one quick side note before we get into this, the project is currently in post-production, so I'll be doing a follow-up video on the editing and storytelling process once we hit our delivery deadline. So make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss that. Okay, so first let me set the scene. The client is a German bank based here in New York. They've been operating in the United States for 50 years now, and to celebrate that anniversary, they wanted to produce a corporate image film, a proper brand film if you want to, that tells the story of their journey in New York over the last 5 decades. So we are talking about sit-down interviews, B-roll footage in one of New York's most iconic office towers, and also archival material, old documents, old photos that we put together to tell the brand story. This is exactly the kind of long-form corporate storytelling I love doing with my company 24 Stills. It's not an event recap, it's not a product demo, it's a real cinematic brand film. So how did this actually happen? This is the part where I think a lot of people in the corporate video world underestimate, the business development side. It started with a pretty standard inquiry. I got connected to a communication managers of this bank here in New York, and actually they were looking for a video production company to cover this corporate event in July. Classic event recap video. Nothing too complicated, nothing special. But as we started talking and I learned more about the business and what they were celebrating, I started to see kind of the big opportunity. So I pitched them on something more ambitious. I came to them with a concept I was calling a reaction time travel video. The idea was that people from different areas of the bank's history would sit in a professional interview setup and react to archival documents, old photos and pieces of the bank's history. Kind of like a documentary style brand film, but with a specific emotional hook. So after some back and forth, a couple of proposal revisions, we got the green light. And here's what we agreed to. A 2 to 3 minute corporate image film. 1 event recap video between 30 and 60 seconds long, and 3 active shooting days, 2 for the main film and 1 for the event, and also 1 passive shooting day where we would film all the documents inside our studio here. And the takeaway? Always look for big opportunities inside the initial ask. A lot of video production clients come to you with a smaller project, but if you take the time to understand their world and where they are coming from, you can find opportunities to, get bigger projects. Alright, let's talk about pre-production, and this is where the real work of corporate video production happens, long before you even set up a camera. The core pre-production steps for projects like this were outlining the story arc, defining the interviews and B-roll needs, planning the shoots, handling logistics, and building out a full run of show for client and crew. So let's start with the story arc. Our original concept, the spontaneous reaction format, actually didn't survive. Just when we sat down and mapped everything out, we realized pretty quickly that trying to capture authentic, unscripted reaction from 5 different people and make it work inside a 2 to 3 minute corporate film just wasn't realistic. The pacing wouldn't hold. So we pivoted. Instead of unscripted reaction, we went with a structured interview script. The marketing team started identifying the right people. Former employees, current managers, and also the CEO who would be flying in from Germany. Each person would represent a different decade of the bank's story. So once we had our interview subjects lined up and confirmed, we could start writing the scripts, and here is where we got lucky in the best possible way. One of the bank's longest employees had actually written a book years ago, full of old photos documenting the bank's history in New York. That became a huge asset for us. It gave us a visual library to pull from when we were writing the scripts, and we were also thinking what kind of material we could pair with each interview. We also built out a shot list for our B-roll, the kind of supporting footage that brings a corporate image film to life. I went a bit ambitious on the shot list, knowing that not all of it would make it to the final cut, especially because we're working with so much archival footage. But it's always better to have options in the edit than not having footage at all. Finishing the shoot plan. So once the logistics were sorted, we could finalize the shoot plan. 2 days on location, day 1, 2 interviews plus B-roll, day 2, 3 interviews plus B-roll. We also decided to use a teleprompter for both interview days, and this was a very lucky and good production decision. When you're producing a corporate image film with scripted interviews, a teleprompter gives you much more control over timing. You can pace the delivery, keep people on script without making them feel like they have to memorize lines, and it just tightens your shooting schedule significantly. And for a project like this one, where we had to work with the CEO with only limited time, it helped and mattered a lot. I also put together 2 documents that I use in every large production. A crew call sheet for my production assistant with every logistical detail they need to know, and a production notebook for the client team. So every employee who was participating knew exactly what to expect on shoot day. On a professional corporate video shoot, clear communication with your client is almost as important as everything that happens on camera. Production day, day 1. So the first shooting day was in March. I brought in a colleague of mine, Ryan, as my production assistant for both days. Having a PA on a shoot like this is not luxury, it's necessary when you're managing interview setups, client relationships, and you have a tight schedule for all of this. So we started by setting up the first interview with one of the bank's employees and shot her interview first. When you are working with a teleprompter on a corporate shoot, one of the things you really have to calibrate is the speed of it. Too fast and it feels rushed. Too slow and it looks kind of unnatural. Getting that right takes a few minutes with each subject, but to be honest, it's worth the time. We also captured some B-roll shots with her after the interview. She was speaking a lot about the 1990s, New York and the shift towards the digital, so we staged some office scenes to visualize that era. Honestly, I'm not sure how much of it will end up in the final cut, given how much archival footage we're working with, but in a production like this, you always want to have options. And in the afternoon, we moved to the CEO interview. These people have very limited time and very high expectations, so you have to be set up, ready and efficient, and you can't waste any time. We had the setup dialed in before he walked in, we moved through the interview smoothly and we wrapped up on time. We also filmed a little bit B-roll and then we could call it a day. So the second shooting day was about a month later in April, and in a lot of ways it was actually smoother than the first one because we knew the building, we knew the elevator situation, we knew where the light came from and how the space worked. That knowledge from day 1 made a huge difference. The goal for day 2 was 3 interview setups, and the client specially wanted to use the Manhattan skyline as the background element in each of these shots. This is one of those things that look incredible on screen but are very tricky to execute, especially if you only work with one big key light. The skyline changes throughout the day. The exposure is constantly shifting and you are trying to balance your subject against the bright background without blowing it out or losing your interview subject in shadow. It requires more finesse than I initially planned for. For the B-roll on day 2, we set up some staged meeting scenes featuring the interview subjects, which I always like to do when possible because it connects your supporting footage directly to the people who tell the story. We also captured some time-lapse shots inside the building, which I'm very excited about, just because Manhattan from this height, especially with a little bit movement, it will look great. And it's very helpful for maybe transitional elements or also for the title scene. So that's where we are right now. We've wrapped up both production days. We are deep in the post-production phase right now, editing and starting to animate, to integrate the archival footage with the interviews. The target delivering is hopefully mid-May, let's see, which gives us enough time to finish the cuts, go to feedback rounds with the clients, and also make sure that everything is ready to publish on the anniversary event. I'll be making a dedicated post-production video once we are through the edit, covering our workflow, how we handled the archival material, and also how the final film looks like. If you're interested in this, feel free to subscribe. My biggest learnings from this project. So before I wrap up, I want to share a few honest takeaways from this production, the stuff that I would do differently or double down if I would start over again. First, always plan more conservatively with your shooting schedule than you think you need to. 2 shooting days for a project of this scope is manageable, but it's very, very tight. There's very little room for anything unexpected. A delayed interview or any technical issues and you have a problem. On future projects like this one, I would really consider at least one or at least half a day more as a buffer. Second, on a project with this many moving parts, an additional crew member would have made a difference. Second camera operator or even a dedicated lighting assistant would have let us move faster and given me more room to focus on interview directions and client communications. Third, and this is a very technical one, be very careful about reflections when you are shooting in glass-heavy office environments. We caught one instance of an unwanted reflection in the footage, and while we are able to fix it in post, it's the kind of thing that costs you time and adds stress to the edit. And finally, sometimes the shoot gods are on your side. Day 1 we had really rough weather, which actually killed our chances of getting clean skyline B-roll. But that same overcast sky gave us incredible soft and natural light for all of our interior B-roll shots. And that's a trade-off I'll take, to be honest. So in corporate video production, if you work with a very lean team, you want to work what you have. And sometimes what you've got is better than what you've planned for. So guys, that's it for this one. If you are building a corporate video production business or you want to produce brand films, I hope that this kind of behind the scenes breakdown helped you to see how we achieved a project like this at 24 Stills. Let me know your thoughts about it. Would love to talk where you are in your journey, what projects you are accomplishing. And yeah, I will share more about this in the future. Thank you so much for watching and I see you hopefully at the next one.